66 million years. That is the definitive cutoff point, the geological line in the sand where the dinosaurs officially eat the dust. The asteroid arrived and the entire planet reset its timer. It was the largest trauma event Earth had experienced in eons, and when the dust settled, 90% of all marine life was gone, wiped out. Except for this one specific chunky blue fish that was supposed to have been dead for the entire Mesozoic era. I'm talking about the coelacanth, and if you think the story of a fish is boring, strap in. This isn't a regular fish. This is the ultimate biological troll. The only creature that ever told paleontologists to their faces, "Yeah, you got the extinction date wrong. Try again, sweetie." We're not talking about some tiny bacterium that survived in a thermal vent.
We are talking about an absolute unit, a 7-foot-long predator with armor plating and fins that look like they were stolen off an unfinished lizard that has been coasting in the deep ocean, literally unchanged since before Triceratops existed. It is the definition of peak biological resilience, and its story forces us to completely rethink the concept of evolution itself. This saga begins not in a textbook, but on December 22, 1938, in the Chalumna River mouth, South Africa. Picture this scene. Hot, humid, the air smelling of salt and decay. A routine fishing trawler pulls up its catch, mostly sharks, rays, and the usual deep water riffraff. And then something enormous hits the deck. It was bright, iridescent blue, almost violet, covered in thick, rough scales that felt like coarse sandpaper, and it had the most bizarre, fleshy fins you'd ever seen. 6 of them, deployed in pairs, sticking out like they were trying to be legs.
Marjorie Courtney Latimer, the curator of the East London Museum, gets the call. She rushes down to the docks. She is looking at this thing and she knows it's special. But it's big, it's heavy, and she doesn't have the facility to perfectly preserve something this large in 1938 South Africa. So she does her best, trying to keep it wet, trying to save the carcass, but the heat is relentless. She immediately sketches it, takes measurements, and ships the information off to the only man she knew who could possibly identify a monster like this, Dr. J.L.B. Smith, a highly respected ichthyologist who lived 500 miles away. Smith, being a busy guy, initially dismisses it. Probably a weird lungfish, probably some kind of strange shark, right? He's thinking logically. The big fish groups have been studied. There are no missing links of this magnitude floating around. Latimer, however, has managed to preserve the hide and the skull, but the internal organs, crucial for classification, have long since decomposed due to the delay in the heat. When Smith finally gets the sketch and the description of those weird lobed fins, his internal logic engine slams into a brick wall. He realizes what he's seeing is impossible. He realizes it because those fins, those fleshy, stump-like appendages, were the defining characteristic of the Sarcopterygi, the lobed-finned fish. This was the lineage that paleontologists had pinned as the ancestor of every tetrapod on land. That meant, by extension, they were our fish ancestors. The problem? The Sarcopterygi were thought to have gone totally extinct 66 million years ago, along with the pterodactyls, the long-necked plesiosaurs, and all the terrible lizards. Finding a living one was like finding a fully functioning World War I biplane parked in your driveway. Smith eventually arrives, sees the specimen, and goes, quote, "I would not have been more surprised if I had encountered a dinosaur walking down the street." He named it Latimeria chalumnae, in honor of Courtney Latimer and the river where it was found. The coelacanth was back, and the scientific community collectively lost its entire mind. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't the fishermen notice this thing before? Simple. It lives in deep, dark canyons, often below 300 feet, which is generally outside the normal range for traditional coastal fishing. This specific fish was likely stressed, sick, or confused and swam up into shallower water where it got caught. It was a statistical anomaly that saved a species from the oblivion of human ignorance. The initial scientific hysteria was overwhelming. They called it the greatest zoological discovery of the 20th century. For years, scientists looked at fossils of coelacanths, theorizing about how their weird, muscular fins were used to drag themselves along muddy bottoms, possibly even initiating the walk onto land. For years, the coelacanth was the prime suspect for the fish that crawled out of the swamp. And here it was, alive, breathing, and still doing whatever it wanted in the abyss. So let's talk pure anatomy.
because this is where the coelacanth earns its title as a true biological freak show. When you look at a coelacanth, you are looking at something operating outside the rules. It's a 6-foot-long, 150-pound fish that has committed fully to the slow life. Its metabolism is glacial. It lives in near-freezing temperatures, which helps, but the key is how lazy this animal is. Studies using deep-sea submersibles found that the coelacanth primarily uses drift feeding. It just hangs out, usually upside down or on its head, floating slowly in the current, waiting for some smaller deep-sea snack, squid, small fish, to float past its face. It is energy efficiency achieved at peak performance. It expends almost zero effort. It's basically the biological equivalent of spending all day on the couch waiting for the delivery driver. Now, those fins, this is the whole deal. They are jointed, muscular lobes, not simple rays like a normal fish. They move in an alternating, almost walking pattern, which is super weird. The pectoral fins move together, and then the pelvic fins move together, and then the dorsal fins move together. It's like a four-wheel drive system running in alternating pairs. However, contrary to the initial theories that these fins were proto-legs used for crawling, we now know they primarily use them for extremely subtle maneuvering.
They let the current do the heavy lifting, using those fins like microscopic rudder adjustments, maintaining absolute equilibrium in the chaotic deep-sea currents. They are masters of slow, precise, three-dimensional movement. They are subtle hunters, not clumsy walkers. The scientists who spent decades analyzing fossil tracks suddenly had to scrap their entire PowerPoint presentation. That's the kind of chaos this fish causes. The skull is another horror show. The coelacanth is the only known living vertebrate that has a fully functional intracranial joint. That means its skull is split into two halves, hinged together and connected by massive muscles. When it opens its mouth to engulf prey, it can swing its entire upper jaw backward, massively increasing the gape of its mouth. It literally unhinges its own head to eat. Nightmare fuel. Imagine seeing that massive blue armored fang drifting toward you, and then its face splits open. Nope. And finally, the brain.
The brain. This is my favorite part of the coelacanth anatomy. This fish has a skull that is massive, maybe the size of a large grapefruit, but the actual brain tissue occupies less than 1.5% of that internal volume. The rest of the space is filled with fatty tissue. Let that sink in. This thing is running on an ancient processor in a supersized case packed mostly with grease. It is surviving massive extinction events, outliving every superstar dinosaur, and doing it all with a brain the size of a large marble. It's a profound testament to the idea that sometimes less is more, and the most successful survival strategy is just to be profoundly dumb and stubborn. The scientific name, coelacanth, means hollow spine, referring to its unique notochord, a flexible rod that runs the length of its body instead of a fully ossified vertebral column. This is an extremely primitive trait, something seen in early fish and shark ancestors. Its whole body plan is a biological snapshot from the Devonian period, 400 million years ago, when the first fish were just starting to get organized. We have coelacanth fossils from 360 million years ago, and honestly, if you laid a Devonian coelacanth fossil next to a modern one, you would swear they died last Tuesday. So why did they survive the KPG extinction? This brings us to the core mystery of the living fossil phenomenon. How did this creature survive when sophisticated marine reptiles, massive sharks, and the most dominant surface dwellers vanished? The answer lies in two critical factors: geography and genetics, blended together with a generous helping of pure, unadulterated deep ocean darkness. First, consider the KPG event. When the Chicxulub asteroid hit, it didn't just make a loud bang. It triggered a global winter. Soot and dust blocked the sun. Photosynthesis crashed, and the marine food web at the surface collapsed almost instantly. The first things to die were the plankton and algae, the very foundation of the surface ecosystem. Then the large creatures that relied on that surface ecosystem starved. Extinction radiated downward. But the coelacanth doesn't live in the sunlit zone. It lives in caves, in submarine canyons, between 300 and 1,500 feet down. The environment here is stable, very stable.
The crucial difference is their metabolism and diet. Surface creatures, sharks, mosasaurs, ammonites, relied on fast, abundant food chains. The coelacanth, meanwhile, is already adapted to scarcity. Its deep-sea home is already a low-energy environment. The drop in productivity didn't affect the deep-sea ecosystems as severely, or at least the change was gradual enough that the already slow-moving coelacanth could compensate. The deep ocean acts as a massive insulating blanket. Temperature, salinity, and pressure remained largely unchanged.
While the surface boiled and then froze, the abyssal zone just got a little dimmer and a little quieter. If your survival strategy is to live slowly, deep down, and require minimal calories, you are perfectly equipped for an extinction-level event. The asteroid targeted the ecosystem of speed and light. The coelacanth occupied the realm of slowness and shadow. The second reason is that coelacanths occupied a narrow, specialized niche. When evolution is working on a species, it's constantly trying out new designs. Think of it like an automotive company constantly releasing new models every year. But sometimes a design is just so good for its specific purpose, there's no pressure to change it. In the case of the coelacanth lineage, most of their relatives did try to evolve. They moved into shallower waters, they developed new fin structures, and they competed fiercely.
And every single one of those experimental lines eventually failed, either getting outcompeted or dying off in a minor extinction event. The line that produced the modern coelacanth, however, retreated. They found their perfect, stable, cold, dark niche, and essentially committed to evolutionary stasis. The environmental pressures were non-existent. There was no need to develop faster fins or sharper teeth because their food supply was consistent and their environment unchanging. This is why the term living fossil is kind of misleading, but also kind of awesome. The idea of a living fossil implies that evolution stopped. That is technically incorrect. Evolution is always happening. But in the coelacanth, the rate of morphological change, the change in body structure, is almost imperceptibly slow. Genetic sequencing showed that the modern coelacanth has an incredibly slow evolutionary clock.
The genetic mutations that drive change accumulate in their DNA at a rate significantly slower than in other vertebrates. It's like their whole genome is just taking a very, very long nap. They have perfected a strategy of survival through stability and slowness. This is a big brain move, honestly. Instead of adapting to change, they simply chose an environment that never changes. The discovery of the first coelacanth, Latimeria chelumnae, sparked a frantic search for the second. For decades, scientists and wealthy adventurers searched the waters around Madagascar and Comoros. The coelacanth became the holy grail of ichthyology. Finding one was basically a guaranteed Nobel Prize, or at least a massive lifetime supply of bragging rights. It was almost 14 years before a second one was caught, also near the Comoro Islands. This confirmed they weren't just a rogue fish, but a population.
This led to decades of tracking and monitoring, which revealed some disturbing facts about their life cycle. They are ovoviviparous. That means the females produce eggs, but they are incubated and hatch internally, giving birth to fully formed live young. And their gestation period? Estimated to be 5 years. 5 years. That is an insane investment for a fish. They also live incredibly long. Recent studies suggest that they can easily live for over a century, 100 years floating around in the deep, eating, reproducing slowly, and doing nothing much else. This super slow life cycle is great for stability in a stable environment, but it's catastrophic for recovery if their population is disturbed. If you're living for a century and only giving birth to a small number of young, you simply cannot bounce back from overfishing or habitat destruction. That's why the coelacanth, despite surviving the asteroid, is now critically endangered because of us.
Then, in 1998, science was trolled again. A second species was found 6,000 miles away near Sulawesi, Indonesia. A marine biologist named Mark Erdman and his wife were honeymooning and spotted one in a local fish market. This one was brown, not blue, leading to the identification of Latimeria menadoensis. This confirmed that the coelacanth didn't just survive in one tiny corner of the Indian Ocean. It survived across the entire Indo-Pacific region, hiding in parallel deep-sea environments. It means the success of the coelacanth wasn't luck. It was a deeply ingrained survival template. They didn't just survive the KPG event, they thrived in the aftermath, expanding their range into every deep volcanic niche they could find. It forces us to consider how much we still don't know about deep time and the planet's history. The coelacanth wasn't the only extinct thing that survived, it was just the biggest and most obvious. Think about the horseshoe crab.
450 million years old, almost identical to its Ordovician ancestors. It survived 3 major extinction events. Or the nautilus, the chambered mollusk, which existed before the dinosaurs. These creatures share a common philosophy: specialized environment, low energy, and a genetic reluctance to change. The coelacanth, however, is special because it belongs to the Sarcopterygiae, the group that in every textbook for 100 years was supposed to be the glorious gateway to land. The coelacanth provides a humbling lesson in evolutionary side quests. While their relatives were busy evolving lungs, developing hands, and conquering the continents, the coelacanth said, "Nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna hang out down here where it's quiet." It's the ultimate evolutionary dropout who inherited the Earth by staying exactly where they started. When you look at the fossils of the Devonian period, the age of fish, you see an ocean teeming with experimental designs.
Fish covered in heavy armor, fish with lungs, fish with bizarre jaws. It was a time of rapid innovation. The coelacanth was one of those designs. Over time, more modern, streamlined, ray-finned fish, the Actinopterygiae, which includes 99% of all fish you eat today, tuna, salmon, cod, came to dominate the surface. They were faster, more flexible, and better adapted to the changing Mesozoic seas. The lobed-finned fish, which were heavy, slow, and structurally rigid, couldn't compete in the new, fast-paced environment. So they did the strategic retreat. They found the deep trenches and dark caves where the fast-moving, high-energy ray-finned fish couldn't follow. They essentially seeded the surface world and took refuge in the dark corners of the Earth, relying on ancient, low-density prey. The key to their survival wasn't conquering new territory, it was specializing in avoiding conflict.
They found a biological dead end, settled down, and waited for the global catastrophes to filter out their competition. When the asteroid struck, it was an external shock that favored their internal philosophy of slow, dark, and deep. Every time I read about the coelacanth, I am reminded that our understanding of extinction is often too linear. We assume the strongest or most adaptable survive. The coelacanth proves that sometimes survival just means finding a bunker and stocking up on minimal supplies. It means being tough enough to withstand massive pressures, but flexible enough to simply drift. They are a reminder that beneath the vast blue surface, there are entire chapters of Earth's history still being written, hidden away from the sunlight and the chaos of the land. This creature exists today not because it was the pinnacle of evolution, but because it found a way to become invisible to the forces of change. It found a geological safe space that existed for 400 million years. That is the true biological miracle. I think the lesson we take from the coelacanth is humility. We spend so much time classifying, organizing, and declaring things extinct, and sometimes nature just gives us the ultimate reality check. It proves that the history of life is infinitely more complex, and often the most successful survival strategy is the one that looks the most ridiculous on paper. It's a 7-foot-long armored fish with a skull that splits in half and a brain made mostly of fat, and it's been trolling scientists for nearly a century. If that isn't peak dinosaur-era swagger, I don't know what is. If you found this deep dive into the slowest, oldest, and most stubborn fish in history interesting, please slam that like button. I love talking about these deep-time weirdos, and hitting subscribe tells the algorithm that you want more of this prehistoric nightmare fuel.
The coelacanth is not just a fish, it's a living monument to the ultimate strategic retreat. It is the original time traveler, drifting silently in the eternal blackness, waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Thanks for watching, and until next time on The Lost World.